Hey guys, what a great theatre, eh? What a great event. So my passion is inspiring people who are starting a new path and in the throes of wondering if they've done the right thing. And how I do that is I like to use stories from building the Ugg boot brand. Believe it or not, it's 40th anniversary next year. And hey, thanks a lot. And I highlight it with 4 mantras that I read in a book of philosophy 25, 30 years ago. And I wrote them out, and I carry this piece of paper forward in my daily planner every January 1st. So that's how much importance I place on them. So the first mantra is feast upon uncertainty. So I want you to come back with me, nearly 40 years ago, 39 years ago, to Perth in Western Australia. And I just spent 10 years and finally graduated as a chartered accountant and quit the same day. I hated it. And I was, wandering around the town for a couple of weeks trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I had just bought a brand new album that changed my life. It was Dark Side of the Moon. And I was listening to the second song, Time, and it said, tired of lying in the sunshine, staying home to watch the rain. You are young and life is long and there is time to kill today. I went, shit, he's talking about me. But then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun. And I just got covered in goosebumps. And I thought, shit. I thought of all my friends who are tracking off to partnerships in the accounting business and all my other friends who'd started business straight out of high school and they were doing well. And I'd been running on the spot for like 10 years. And so I just discovered yoga, from a book, and that had led me into meditation. And I was meditating one day thinking, okay, what the hell am I going to do? And bam, I got these goosebumps again. And I thought, all the big trends are coming out of California. Levi jeans, waterbeds, all the surf brands, skateboards, And I thought, I'm going to go to California. I'm going to find the next big thing and bring it back to Australia and make my fortune. And so within 2 weeks, I arrived at Los Angeles airport. I had my surfboard and my suitcase. And I rented a little place in Santa Monica and went straight to Malibu. It had been my dream to surf Malibu. And I spent a month there and, didn't find the next big thing, and another month and another month. And it was in about the 4th month I was there. It was now October. The water's getting cold. The winds is getting chilly. And I just finished the surf, and I was pulling on my sheepskin boots that I'd brought from Australia. And I got this massive dose of goosebumps all the way down my spine. I went, shit. There's no sheepskin boots in America. And everyone in Australia, at least 1 in 2 people, had some sort of sheepskin footwear. So I turned to my buddy, and I said, Doug, we got to go into business, man. We're going to be instant millionaires. You've all heard that before, right? So I couldn't wait to get back to our house. We did some research, and we called up a manufacturer in Western Australia. His name was George Bircher at Country Leather. And to cut a long story short, we ended up him agreeing to be our distributor. So our biggest challenge, we had to find $500 to buy samples, but we scraped it together and the samples arrived. This is what they looked like. That yellow stuff on the top is glue. All around the bottom is glue. There was just 2 pieces of sheepskin stitched together and glued onto a linoleum sole, right? But that was the state of the art. So Doug was going to be the salesman, so he went around to all the shoe stores and came back 2 weeks later and not a single order. He said, Brian, they tell me we're crazy trying to sell sheepskin in California. And I sort of understood that, but California's climate's identical to Australia. So I thought laterally, which every entrepreneur has to do, how come all my buddies up at Malibu think this is the best idea in the world? And it struck me, well, they all surf. Most of them have been down to Australia on a surf trip, and they all brought 4 or 5 pairs back for their buddies. So it was really well known in the surf market. So Doug and I just decided to, head out to the surf shops. And He made sure I did my shares, which I was terrified of sales, right? Being an accountant. So I remember, walking into the first store, with a sheepish look on my face and a little bag of samples. And the owner goes, "Oh, Ugg boots, man. What are you doing with those? They're fantastic." And I said, "Well, I'm thinking of importing them into America." "Oh my God, you make a fortune. They're the best thing. I got a pair, they're the best things in the world." And I thought, well, this selling's not so bad, So I head off to the next store and it's like, "Oh, Ugg boots, man. Yeah, my buddies have been wearing them. They rave about them. You'll do fantastic." And so this happened all the way down the coast of San Diego, and Doug was doing the same thing up in the San Fernando Valley. And so we regrouped at my little house in Santa Monica, and we were just slapping each other on the back how rich we were going to be, but it never crossed our minds that we hadn't asked for an order. I mean, why should we? We had no inventory, right? So that was the next problem. How do we get inventory? And who's heard that saying that once you started on a path, the universe will conspire to work with you, right? Thousands of years old. Well, my roommate overheard us talking about this. He said, "Oh, there's some guys in my office, they're looking for investments." So just like that, without a business plan, we raised $20,000, which in today's terms is about 75, a lot of money. And we sent 15 down to Australia and ordered 500 pairs of boots for all to start our fortune going. And they arrived right at the middle of December, and so we had to get the product out for Christmas. And so Doug and I went back on the road to get orders. Right, this time I come into Con Surfboards with a huge bag of product and an order pad. And I heard you, "Jim, how many do you want?" And he goes, "Oh, well done, Brian, but we couldn't sell them in our store, man. We just sell surfboards and trunks and sandals and no, you should go to the shoe stores." Uh-oh. Next door, "Oh, well done, Brian, but we sell surfboards and bikinis and trunks and flip-flops. Then we couldn't sell them out of our store." And this happened all the way down the coast, every single store that I'd previously visited, and same with Doug. So at the end of, just before Christmas, we tallied up all of our orders, and here is the deposit slip for the first year's sales of Ugg. 28 pairs, right? Horribly disappointing. But the lesson that came out of this for me is, it didn't come till much, much later because I'd started a lot of businesses and I'd run Ugg a lot. I ended up writing a book based on, it's all just a whole lot of stories and personal philosophy around how to build a business, how to be an entrepreneur, basically. And the theme of the book is you can't give birth to adults. Right? Every company you see on the stock exchange listing of the Wall Street Journal started with $1,000, right? Somebody conceived an idea. They did the first action, which was the birth. The birth of Ugg was buying that 6 pairs of samples. And then it just lies there, right? And it doesn't matter if it's a product, if it's a service, if it's a new sitcom on TV, if it's a new religion, a self-help profit, non-profit. You come up with the aha and it just lies there. And unfortunately, that's where most entrepreneurs and most people give up, because they don't see the evidence of it coming. But there's no amount of overfeeding it or jiggling the cradle or urging this infant. It cannot get up and go to college, right? It has to be an infant. But pretty soon it starts toddling, and that's a really cool stage for your movement, because people are writing articles about it, and the first people are paying deposits for it, and starting to see some action. And then that rolls into the youth quite quickly. And the youth is the best phase of any business or movement, because you've got consistent orders coming in, production's working, shipping and receiving is working, public relations and accounting's working, and you can run a $25, $30 million business in that youth phase. But if it's a really, really good product or a great service, you're going to hit the teenage years, okay? And who can remember wanting to be in every party in town as a teenager, right? the same urges there. You want to be in every trade show, you want to be in every big box retailer, you want to be in every major distributor, and you can outstrip your capital so fast. I almost lost Uggs several times in that teenage phase. But the theme that, that came out of it was that you can't give birth to adults, and it is a universal truth. So my next mantra is to fatten upon disappointment. And I'll give you some stories to illustrate that, right? So let's fast forward a couple of years. I call this my tadpole story, right? So having sold 28 pairs, do you think that would be a good time to give up? But I couldn't, because I had all my investors' money tied up in the third bedroom in my house, with 480 pairs of boots. So I started doing swap meets and street fairs, but the best retail outlet I had was the back of my van at Malibu Beach, because the word got out that the Ugg guys at Malibu. And so even if the surf was shitty, I still had to go, because people would be coming and they'd get on my case if I wasn't there, But the sales only went to about 5,000 that next year, so got another summer job, scraping boats at Marina del Rey, and winter fall came, so I decided I'm going to do advertising. So I hired these models and a guy and a girl and posed them at Wind and Sea Beach in La Jolla, and made the perfect hair and the perfect clothes, and the boots were like this big in the major part of the ad, and I ran those ads and the sales went to about $10,000. Another summer job, I think it was construction in Bel Air, near Beverly Hills. And then the next fall I thought, okay, I'm going to hire better looking models. And I posed them on the beach at Wind and Sea with the perfect hair and the perfect boots, front and center, this big in the ad, And the sales went to like $25,000. So another summer job, this one was working as a greenskeeper at Singing Hills Golf Course in El Cajon. And that was the year I decided to give up. And I made my decision to, as soon as fall comes, I'm just going to quit the inventory and just put that behind me. And remember that there was the first storm had just hit the coast. A big northwest storm came through. And it was freezing cold, and I got home wet after the golf course, and there were like 30 messages on my answering machine from surf shops going, God, we need boots. Everyone is coming into our stores asking for boots, We're going to drive down, And so they just cleaned me out overnight. And then I realized, well, I can't just quit. This is, I think they're starting to finally get some momentum. And so they came down and cleared it all out. And I was going to start my advertising campaign again it was about September of the year. And I thought, I'm going to talk to one of my surf shop owners. And I had a beer with Rob, who owns South Coast Surf Shop. And I was explaining this dilemma about all this advertising and it's getting nowhere. And he just said, shut up, Brian. And he calls out to the back, hey, you guys, come out here. And about half a dozen little 12, 13-year-old grommets come out. And he says, what do you guys think of Uggs? They all just went, oh, those Uggs, man, they're so fake. Have you seen those ads? Those models, they can't surf. And instantly, I realized I'm sending the wrong message to my target market. And again, being an entrepreneur, you have to pivot real fast. So I called up a buddy of mine who was running a National Scholastic Surf Association up in Orange County. And I said, Pete, do you have any young kids going to turn pro soon? And he gave me Mike Parsons and Ted Robinson as young kids. So I signed them on, paid them in Ugg boots. And instead of hiring an expensive photographer or anything, I just took my little telephoto lens with me and we went surfing to Black's Beach and Trestles. And these are two iconic surf walks. They're about a mile long, fantastic surf at the end. And so I started running these ads, and guess what? The sales went to $200,000, right? Why? Because I'd figured out how to get into the minds of these kids who just, all they wanted to do was to be on one of those walks with Mike Parsons or Ted Robinson, right? And here's the interesting thing. Look how big the Ugg boots are. Right. right? Almost non-existent, right? But it doesn't matter, and that's when I really learned about marketing and advertising, is that you never sell your product. You sell the benefit, you sell the feeling. The more emotional you can make it, in whether it's a print ad or a TV ad or a video or whatever, the more you can bring them into the feeling, the better the ad is and the more success, most success you're going to have. And so the moral for this one is that the quickest way for a tadpole to become a frog is live every day happily as a tadpole, right? You cannot accelerate the way things go. If you try and go too fast, you won't have any roots down, it'll crash and fall. I've seen so many companies come in with massive capital, and they just, like if I had $5 million to start this company, I would have spent $5 million doing ads of people on the beach, right? It would have totally gone flat. So you have to put the roots down and figure out what is the real essence of the product or the business that you get into. So the next mantra I have is invigorate in the presence of difficulties. So let's fast forward a few years. We're doing about $2.5 million in sales by now. And that first investors we had to buy them out and get bigger ones, and then we had to buy them out and get bigger ones. And now I've got 3 guys up in Anaheim who are going to be my next investment group. And we're all going to own the company 25% each, which was a pretty good deal. It was the best deal I could make at the time. But there were 2 provisos. One is that I didn't get my actual certificate issued until I finished this little trademark lawsuit that I'd been in with a company called UGHS. And the other thing was that I was now going to be a sales rep full time, and they were going to run the warehouse office and all that sort of stuff, and I was just going to be out servicing all the clients. And that was a great deal for me. I loved that idea. So we moved all the inventory up to Anaheim and took a couple of days to sort it all out. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to go down Beach Boulevard to Huntington Beach and Huntington Surf and Sport for my first sales call, right? And I walked in the door around 10 o'clock in the morning, and the owner, Jeff, goes, "Hey, Brian, I heard you sold the business." I went, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I called an order in this morning and they said you don't own the company anymore." I said, "You're kidding me, they said that?" And I couldn't wait to get out of there. I went next door to the Shell gas station, because this is before cell phones, And I call up Anaheim, I go, "Neil, what the hell are you telling people?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you tell them I don't own the company." He said, "Well, you don't." And I said, "Yes, I do. You're my 3 new partners." He goes, "No, you don't get your certificate issued until..." And I just hung up, and I got in my car, I drove straight back to San Diego, went into my little office there, and I pulled out the contract, and I read it, and I reread it. I went, "Oh, shit, I don't own the company anymore." I went into this horrible depression. And for 3 days, I couldn't even think straight. And I can remember on the 3rd night, I was on my back on the living room floor watching TV, and my wife was sitting on the couch, and I can remember the show finished, and I clicked the TV off, and I rolled over onto my stomach and got up on my hands and knees and started crawling towards the bedroom. And Laura, God bless her, she's a really quiet person. She just looked at me and says, "You get up now and walk to bed like a man." And she scared the shit out of me. And it was like, when I sort of stood up, it was like coming out of a fog. And I thought, oh my God, there's so much more to life than this shitty little sheepskin business, right? And I slept like a baby that night. And the next day I got back into my old self. I started meditating again, and I thought, okay, what can I do? Can I be a real estate broker? No. Business broker? Maybe. Accountant? Never. And then suddenly I got this massive dose of goosebumps. So I'm going to segue here. Here's my take on goosebumps, right? I know everybody in this room's had them. God isn't way the hell out there at the end of the universe, right? I totally believe that there's a fragment of that universal spirit in every single one of us. It's the identical fragment in every one of us, right? And it has a pattern or an idea of what it wants to do with each one of our individual lives. And every time we make a decision that's in alignment with that bigger plan, it says like, go for it, Brian, and it sends a signal. And the only way it can communicate is through this electrochemical system we have called a body, right? And so I want to challenge you all in the future, when you get goosebumps, and it'll happen, just stop and think for a second, what did I just do? And I'll bet you it's been a sort of a momentous decision or a realization or something that's more than the ordinary. So anyway, why did I get those goosebumps? I thought, sales. I love sales. After all these years of hating it, now I love it. And I thought, what can I sell? Ugg boots. I love Ugg boots. So I ate humble pie and I went back and saw the guys at Anaheim and I said, okay, look, I may never own the company, but I promise you I'm going to try and get Ugg boots on every single person in America. And so I went on the road then, and now selling wasn't like, before selling was trying to get, now I'm realizing, hey, I'm a benefactor. These guys are making a ton of money off my boots. Some of the shops are making $80,000, $100,000 a season on Uggs, and I realize I'm a benefactor. And so I'd walk into stores that the owner didn't even have to be there. I'd fix up all the inventory and take out the size 4s and the 13s and swap 7s and 8s because I knew they would sell, And so my customer service went over the top. And I got back after the first month to Anaheim, and Neil hands me a check for, $5,000. He says, that's your commissions. And that was the first money I'd ever pulled out of the company. And next month, check for $10,000. Next month, another check for $10,000. And I started thinking, wow, I'm having a ball out here with all my customers, playing golf in the summer and surfing and, working like crazy in the winter, but I'm just loving life. And that led me to my next piece of philosophy, which is, it says sometimes that nearly always your most disappointing disappointments will become your greatest blessings. And I'm, convinced that every one of you, if you, in the last year had some disaster happen, and you look back now and think, God, that's one of the best things that ever happened, right? Because look where I am now. So that's a very true statement. So fast forwarding again now, my fourth mantra is enthuse over apparent defeat. So now this is like 10 years later, we're doing about 6 million in sales. I've been on the road for 3 years, just all across the country working with 30 or 40 sales reps. I put up nearly 2 million frequent flyer miles in that period, just traveling as a salesman and getting the word of our guy. I was like the barbarian in the wilderness spreading the word, right? And the sales were doing really good. And Neil had, in the meantime, bought out Paul and Joe, so he now owned 100% of the company. And he called me up one day and said, hey, Brian, you've finished the lawsuit, come on in next week, and we're going to issue you 25% of your stock. I was in heaven. And so, I was, just out there working with the reps. And over the weekend, I was out, and my wife called, and now I've moved on. I got a cell phone, which is, about the size of a brick, and it's got a cord that goes down into the car. But, I had an antenna on the back of the car, which was so cool. And Laura's crying. And I go, Laura, what's the matter? She said, oh, Neil's just died. Oh, my world just crashed again, I was just like so primed to get my company back. And he'd been in a motocross race and had a massive heart attack and never recovered. So I called up his widow and said, Della, I'll be up in, tomorrow morning. And she'd never set foot inside the business. She had no idea what was going on. And then the call I dreaded was to George Bircher at Country Leather in Australia, because he had just had 3 years of fantastic payments coming through with Neil. And I knew he was going to remember back to when I was running the company. And it was never really certain, So, I made that call and I said, don't worry, George, I'm going to find money. We're going to get it all together. And, we'll save it, right? So that began, I went up to Anaheim the next day, and that began the longest 8 months of my year. I was Friday night, chronic sore throat every Friday. and just trying to figure out what was going on. But it was the best of times and the worst of times. The best was that I just introduced black and charcoal as two new colors, and it was kicking butt with all the sales reps, right? So orders were fantastic. And the worst was that I'd been trying to go to banks with a business plan to get financing, and it was, after 10 years, UGG's a fad, won't be around next year. Bank after bank after bank, it's a fad. And then the investment bankers, they'd see nothing happening and then a spike for 3 months, and so they weren't interested. And so finally, on the other good thing, or the other bad thing, was when I was bundling all these orders to George, sending them down to Australia, 5,000 pairs at a time, going, George, it's fantastic, man. Get your production started. Well, how are you going to pay me? Don't worry, George, I'm working on that. Just get it all started. And this happened, for like 2 or 3 months, all the way through to June. And I'm thinking, I'm getting really bad vibes from George. So I tried to think, well, who else would be interested? So I found a tannery in Melbourne, and I sent a business plan down to him, the owner of the tannery, and he said, oh, come on down, Brian. It's, that's fantastic, man. We'll take on the world. And so I flew down to Melbourne, and it was great until I got into his office and I saw this plaque on his desk that said, I reserve the right to change my mind. God, did he ever. First day was how do we, making all these plans to change, take over the world, right? And the next day was, oh, Brian, I've thought about it. It's so risky, you're in Los Angeles, I'm sending all this money over, sheepskin, and I don't know how you can pay me. And the next day it was, don't worry, I found an associate in Los Angeles, he's going to look in over you. And the next day was, oh, look, Brian, it's a family business and the family have outvoted me and they don't want to go ahead, it's too risky. And so I ended up leaving without a deal. And I got back to Los Angeles after 5 days, and the first thing I was encountered with, my sales rep said, Brian, there's a company out here called Thunderwear, and they're selling sheepskin boots, and they claim they're going to be putting UGG out of business. Oh, God, who are they? And she said, well, it's a Thunderwear. So I got the trade directory out, and I looked them up, and they're a windsurfing company. Why the hell are they selling sheepskin boots? Oh, I got worse problems, right? So I threw it aside. And so now it's July, August, we still didn't have them financing. George is still non-committal. And the trade show starts in September that kicks off the shipping for the season, right? And so my wife and I had a chat, do we go there or not? Do we pull out? And I wasn't defeated yet. I said, well, let's go show up, I don't know how we're going to get product, but we'll go and, I don't want anybody to know that we're out of business, so we'll go and pretend that we're still in business, right? So we put the trade show booth up and used all last year's product, and I thought, I wonder where those Thunderwear people are. So I got the directory of the show, and I found them way up the back near the toilets, and I walked over and I stopped about 2 booths short and went, oh, shit. There was all of my black, all the charcoal, all of my natural and sand colors, all with Thugs labels. And I thought that was a rather appropriate name for their business, right? And, that's when I knew we were out of business. But I didn't tell anybody at the show. I didn't tell any of my sales staff or anything. We wrote a record $250,000 worth of orders, which I knew we wouldn't be able to deliver. And so after 3 days, we pulled the show down, packed up. I went back home and I talked to Laura and I said, okay, on Monday, we're going to, tell everybody, we're going to call our best customers, tell them we're out of business. And so we went to bed. The last call I made before I went to bed was to Gordon at the tannery. I said, Gordon, look, thanks so much for all the effort you put in. This is what George has done. Laura and I have talked about it. We're going to close up shop. And so, thank you so much. And we hung up. He was sad, And about 2 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings. And I pick it up. Hello? Brian? It's Gordon. Screw George Bircher. I'll get you all the boots you need. And just like that, we were back in business, right? No handshake, no contract. And I sent all the patterns down, and he duplicated them and sent them out to 4 or 5 manufacturers. He cranked up the tannery to full production, and pretty soon we were getting 2,000 pairs, on a Friday, and then every Friday after that we got 5,000 pairs in all through October, November, December, and the surf shops found out that was every Friday, so they'd be all waiting in our parking lot for the truck to arrive. And by lunchtime Saturday, we were clean every single Saturday for 3 months. And I didn't care. We were still in business, right? We threw away over $1 million worth of orders that we just couldn't deliver on. And I really didn't care. We finished that year still alive. But then 2 really funny things happened between Christmas and New Year. When Neil had decided to bring me into the company, we took out life insurance policies on each other, and damn it, the life insurance paid out, and it was just enough for me to buy the business back 100% from his widow at full value. So she got everything that Neil had put in, and I got the company back, right? The other weird thing that happened was that the customs broker screwed up and shipped 2,000 pairs of thugs to me and 1,000 pair of my Ugg boots to them. So they were in San Clemente, so I decided to go up and swap them out, and we did. And I was driving back, along Camp Pendleton, and I was thinking, how come we couldn't keep boots in our warehouse for 24 hours? And the thugs warehouse, which is floor to ceiling, way bigger warehouse than ours, and they're floor to ceiling full of sheepskin boots. And that's when I realized that the loyalty of my customers was so strong that they were willing to throw away over $2 million worth of orders at retail, and just because they realized what George had done, and they were so loyal to me. And so that's a testament to customers. God, these are all my friends. They still today are friends, and the customer service is so critical. But now we're in an arena of websites and clicks, and everything's instant, and it's so easy to lose track of your customers. But you must reach out. And I'm working with one girl. Her name is Nicole, and I've been with her a couple of years now. And she has these lamb leather sash bags. There's a pouch in the front and back and nothing on the hips, so you wear it like apparel. Brilliant bags. And we just did about $3 million of sales on Facebook alone last year. But the reason for that is that when she started out, no customer got a bag without a phone call the following week saying, hey, did you get your bag? Do you like it? What do you think of it? And over the years, she's developed this amazing, and I use that amazing with a capital A, right? She has this group of followers that are now called Sash Sisters, right? And she's got 6,577 as of a couple of days ago. And these are fanatic. This is not the 40,000 on her mailing list. This is just the Sash Sister group, right? And she just did a Kickstarter campaign and raised $1.1 million 2 months ago. And 70% of the people had never been on Kickstarter before, so we know it was all of these women, right? So, and here's to top it off. We're having a Sash Bash in March in San Diego, and women have already signed up from Canada, US, all over the country to come for a Sash. Imagine going to a party for a handbag, That's customer service, right? So I'm going to finish up now with a couple of things. Well, before I do, I'm going to give you my gift. Take out your phones and take a photo of this, because these statements are the most powerful positive statements, and you don't have to be in business for this to work. This is business, personal, but no matter what situation comes up in your life, if you can look at one of these 4 mantras, they will address whatever the issue is, and they're so, so positive. So as I close, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to skip through a bunch of slides here because I'm way behind, so just bear with me while I do this. And come back on that one. Whoops. That was a good story, but we just don't have time. So right as we were getting ready to sell the company, I had been shipping to this woman in London. Her name was Trudy Styler. And, we'd been sending, bags to all her friends every Christmas for years, but Trudy was Sting's wife, so we were part of this cool, thing. And this year she called me and said, Brian, I've got the biggest favor to ask of you. I've just been to a seminar. It's changed my world. I want the most perfect pair of size 7 or 8 tall Uggs, brown, and here's where to send them. She said, do you have a pen? I go, yep. She goes, Oprah, care of Oprah Winfrey. And let me back up. That led us into Oprah's favorite things and best picks for Christmas and everything for 2 or 3 years. And this is the vehicle that took UGG from 20 million that I'd built it up to. And then this one sort of blew it open and took it all over the world. And that's why UGG's been in the billions for the last 6 years. So anyway, I love speaking to entrepreneurs. I love speaking to people in general who have got a great idea and want to follow it. And the book is just like 20 more, 30 more stories like I've just told you, and lots of philosophy, lots of spirituality. And this is, if you do read it or want to have an entrepreneur friend that's starting out, I think it's a really good gift for them. So I want to thank you so much for having me. And thank you, Eric. Thanks a lot.